Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Voice with Voices. Today we're coming to you from Chaotic Con in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Today I'm joined by Andrew Love.
Hello.
How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yes.
Pretty small con.
Yeah.
But a lot of fun so far.
Well, that's the good thing about smaller cons is it's a little more personal and a little easier going, and you're not kind of overwhelmed by like, oh, there's this and that, and I don't have time for this. I can, you can kind of prioritize.
So we have a few questions here for you. First is, what is it like working in industry today?
It's awesome. I've been doing this now for almost 10 years, and it gets more exciting every year because the shows just keep getting better and better and better, and the animation gets better and better. But there is also a flip side to that. Like, one of the bad parts of the industry is that with the internet, there is, you have a lot of the shows at your fingertips, and sometimes it's tempting when you don't have the cash flow to download it. But when you download it, it makes it harder for us to do what we do. So that's a bad part of the industry. But other than that, that one facet, everything's awesome. It's great.
Now, over those 10 years you've been in the industry, is there a show or two that are like your favorites that you've worked on?
My favorite by far is Kids on the Slope. I'm a huge fan of jazz, and to be able to work on a show that is more slice of life, and it's in the 60s and it deals with jazz, and it's by the creators of Cowboy Bebop. It's just a beautiful show. When I watched it, I cried like a little girl, and I love it. I love the character of Sentaro. He comes off as being one way, and then as you progress through the show, you see that there's a lot more to him, and it's just a very honorable character. I also like, on the flip side of that coin, I like Legend of the Dark King, Fist of the North Star, Rao, because he's a badass. Like, in the first episode, he's confronted by this gang, and their leader is like twice to 3 times his size, and he just blows a hole through his chest with one punch. I'm like, whoa. That, and it's one of the first shows that I really got to play opposite of my wife, because she was like a lieutenant, along with David Matrenga,
right.
Which he and I get to play a lot of shows where we're against each other. And then the third one, that's a segue, is Kanade. Really enjoyed working on that. Kazakio is a fun character.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another one of the shows you've worked on, Angel Beats. What was it like working on that?
That was a lot of fun too. It's a big ensemble, and also it was a lot of fun because Emily's work in that is really great, and I'm really proud of my wife.
Okay. Now, is there any characters that you've played in shows that you would like to be in real life? And if you got to be those characters, who would it be? And feel free to mix and match different qualities of different characters.
It would be somewhere between Sentaro and Akio, because I think Akio is a great dad, and I think Sentaro is a great friend, and the mixture of those two characters, with some wackiness in there. Yeah.
Now, going back to some of those favorites that you listed off, what was it like working on Kanade?
It was, at first, it was kind of a transition, because I want to say that it was one of the first animes that I had worked on where it was more of a slice of life, and not so much about big crazy evil forces and a lot of destruction. It was about relationships and family life and dealing with certain adversities, and it was also probably the closest I've played to myself. So that was a lot of fun.
I just love those burst moments. Sanaya, love
No,
your
no,
friend.
no, no.
Hilarious. And how about Kids on a Slope? What was it like working on that?
That was a blast because a lot of the times we don't have a lot of the information prior to going into recording. If we're lucky enough to see the show, then you have a scope of what it is. But I would say a vast majority of the time, you are going in there with your part. I think there's a misconception that when you work on a show, you have seen the entire show, and so you know how these people relate. And whether you're talking or not, you have that information. Now, the directors do a good job of filling you in, but it's a very different thing once you finally watch it all. So, playing Centauro as it was unfolding was just an absolute joy.
Another show you worked on, Medaka Box. What was it like working on that?
That was probably one of the more challenging characters. It was something that was not in my typical voice range. Because generally, like Centauro and the character in Angel Beats, I usually play like the wrestler or the big guy or the kind of the rougher bully type in school shows, and that character was a little bit more like something Chris Patton would do, and I know that in doing it, that one of the directors was, or the director was, you gotta kind of push it up and keep it high because I have a tendency to go low, just where my voice naturally sits, and I also, I made a huge mistake of looking at what certain fans had said, and that was crushing because they were looking for more of, Chris Patton, which is a much lighter, airier voice. Right. Maybe not airy is the best word to describe it, but it's a higher pitch. Yeah. And they were like, "Who? Why? Why did this? How is this possible?" And it's kind of, in the end, it is a directorial decision. They had cast me in that role, and I think a lot of times there might be the misconception that I made the ultimate decision. Right. I mean, I did the best that I possibly could, but that was probably one of the more challenging roles to keep it within that vocal range.
Well, I mean, I watched the entire series. I actually enjoyed it. Cool. It took a little while because it's not something typically your cast does, but right. After like 4 or 5 episodes, I was like, I'm enjoying this. I thought you did a great job.
Well, thank you. It's it's also, like, I can do the wacky, like, Tadashi in Special A, and I try to kind of keep some of that wackiness in there, yeah.
Now, a movie that you worked on that you didn't only do voiceover for, but motion capture, Starship Troopers Invasion. What was it like working on that?
That was awesome, because that was my second time to go to Japan. The first time I went with David Matranga and another actor, Adam Van Wagener, and we were going to do stuff for a video game. And ultimately, the video game got canceled, and we were only doing like 30% of the motion capture for the cutscenes, and the idea was for us to come back, and then it got squashed, and it was really dissatisfying to work on something and not see it all the way through to the end. So then when this came along, it was an opportunity to actually finish a project and go to Japan again and work with Shinji Aramaki, who is just an amazing person, just so cool. And on top of all of that was Starship Troopers, which I was a huge fan of the original. Yeah. I started to read the book, which is terrible because I know that certain purists are like, "You haven't read the book? Oh, come on!" But I loved the Verhoeven. The director's, I can't say his name, but I loved his first film, and I liked that they were incorporating aspects of the characters from the first film and styles of it. And Emily got to come along.
Yeah.
So, and on top of that, we played 2 new characters to the franchise who fall in love with each other, which was really, really fun, but also awkward at the same time, because there's a scene where we're kind of, things are going to happen, and as you're watching, you're like, oh, okay, it's in a spaceship, and it's just those 2, but it's not. I was laying down, and Emily climbed on top of me, and there's the director, and there's the translator, and there's this guy, and there's like 40 other people just kind of like, yeah, all right. So that was kind of an interesting situation, but it's so unique to be able to be a part of something that years prior you're like, oh, this is so cool, I really enjoy this, and then later to circle back around and to be a part of that kind of canon, it was awesome. And you get to run around with like guns and blast bugs, which was this dude, Ataki-san, who, in order to recreate the bug, had this like big long stick with like this like pool noodle that had been kind of bent around, and he would to represent the bugs. It was a lot of fun. Oh, and the guns that we shot, I guess they're like the plastic bullet guns, little, I don't know what they're called, but
BB guns?
Well, they weren't BB guns, but kind of like that.
They're the plastic ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had the automated
Airsoft.
Yeah. And it would be like so even though we weren't shooting anything, to get that kind of like
just made that much more like
it was a lot of fun.
Get you into it.
And there were a lot of jokes on the set. Ty Mabry, he did Hero, and he was really funny. There were 6 of us that went, and he made a toast at one of the dinners, and he was like, to a cast of 6 and 4 great actors. And we're like, oh, wait a minute, am I a part of the 4? What is it? So, but there was a lot of cutting up behind the scenes. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, so that was great.
Now, lastly, is there any way any of your fans can follow you on like social media networks like Facebook, Twitter, or any other?
Yeah, I have an actors page on Facebook, and I'm not on the Twitter yet. I actually have one, but I haven't used it. One of the things I like to do, I love comics, and I love action figures. Huge collection of action figures. And I like to take pictures of them and set them up. And I have a Tumblr that's called lightscameraactionfigures.tumblr.com. So if you want to see some of my action figure pictures, you can go there.
Just curious, do you have any figures of the characters you played in the anime?
No, but I really, really want to get one. I'm thinking maybe somebody from One Piece. I can find that because they have so many.
Yeah.
But that's one of the goals of my life, is to ultimately own an action figure of something that I've done. And maybe the closest thing might be, I was like kind of hoping that they would do a bug spray action figure from Starship Troopers. Maybe if it gets a cult following, that will eventually happen. Because that would actually be like not only something that I voiced, but something that I actually physically did. Like David is, Briario's. He's been Briario's for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And they've got really cool action figures of Briario's. But yeah, I don't have one yet, but hopefully I'll get one. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Andrew. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm Ansel. He's Andrew.
Yo.
We'll see you next time.